Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Widowhood. Trish is our guest today. She's not a widow, but my gosh, she has been through some things. And what you're going to learn today is about the power of no, the power of setting boundaries, the real concept of self-care, and a lot more. Let's get into this conversation right now. Hello, Trish. Welcome to the Widowhood.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor to have this invitation and to open up my voice to your audience. I don't take that lightly that you asked me to share your platform with you. And for that, I am honored and I am blessed.
Thank you so much. And Widowhood, we often talk about grief is not limited to the passing of our spouse. And my guest, about to be your new BFF today, is going to share her lived experience. And the reason why I invited Trish here, so yes, somebody else I found on TikTok, and watching her share her journey, doing a TikTok live with her passion to empower people and especially women just drew her to this space, because we need spaces that are not actually embedded in our community, because that voice can resonate. And I know the things that Trish is going to share about her personal journey, her resilience, the things that she's overcome, you're going to be able to take a piece of that and incorporate it into your life. And her voice, my desire, will ring in your ear when you think like, maybe, I don't know if I can do this, and go, you know, Trish was able to push. And that's why I wanted her to be in this space, to be able to share. So Trish, what is your favorite color?
My favorite color is purple, but my favorite color to wear is actually black. And I found out from my daughter that when you wear a lot of black clothing, I always say, well, black is easy and it makes me look thinner. She found out that when you wear a lot of black clothes, that you're actually hiding behind something. Yes. So she found that out. And I wear, 90% of my wardrobe is black, but purple is my all-time favorite color.
I did not know about the black, the concept in which your daughter. So when you heard that, what was your immediate thought?
It immediately resonated with me because since going through my process of all the illnesses and everything, I have joined therapy, and she has also joined therapy. So she found this out from her therapist, but it immediately resonated with me that it is actually a cover. I say that it's easy and it makes me look thinner, but I'm actually trying to cover up and hide my body, or it immediately made sense. Okay. Will I start to wear more colors? I don't know. But
you saw me leaning into that next question. Thank you for helping me out with that.
Yeah, I don't know.
You said all of your illnesses. What does that look like?
So in November of 2022, I woke up at 4 a.m. And was transported to the hospital and ended up having a massive heart attack in the hospital that day, followed by 4 days later, open heart surgery. I had a quadruple bypass where 90% of 4 major arteries in my heart were blocked. So I could have passed away at any moment had I not gotten to the hospital. That's how serious it was. And then while I was there, to make sure that your body is prepared for surgery, they do a plethora of tests and they scan your whole body and they do all those things. And that's when they found a nodule on my thyroid and they found a cyst on my liver. So they allowed me to heal from the heart attack and the open heart surgery. And then they did liver biopsies and all that stuff. Everything with my liver came back okay. But then I went and my thyroid, they were like, we're just going to watch it. And I had a biopsy and there was some negative some abnormal cells, but they said it was nothing to worry about, and we just watch it. And then I went back to the endocrinologist, and she said, oh, this is really pressing on your voice box and your esophagus, so we need to get this out. And when they went in to take out the right side, and they biopsied that, when it went to pathology, it came back with 2 forms of cancer, but one is an aggressive, which is called Hurthle cell carcinoma, and it typically starts in the thyroid, but once they remove the thyroid, it can reoccur in your esophagus, your lungs, or your stomach. So I'll be getting scans for the next 2 years, every 3 months, and then after 2 years it goes to 6 months, and then after year 5 it'll be once a year.
Now, I know you rattled all of that off like somebody reading a resume.
That's my new resume. That's my new elevator speech.
But there's a lot behind each one of those things that you shared. And I want to say thank you for being so transparent and being willing to have this conversation. Because oftentimes people don't want anyone to know when they're not feeling well. They don't want anyone to know what is going on. In all of that you shared, why is it so important to you to have a voice and to share what is going on with you personally?
Because I want people to know. I actually started my TikTok, and I haven't been as consistent as I should be, but I want people to know that it's so important to put themselves first and prioritize their health, because I found myself taking care of everybody else except myself. And also there was some traumas within my life that didn't allow me to speak about certain things that were happening, and illnesses and things within your family. You know, in the African American culture, especially the Afro-Caribbean culture, you don't talk about illness in the family. You know, although my mother was a nurse, we weren't empowered to talk about it. So you can't talk about it and break these things within our own families, right? Within our own generations, nor can we break them within our community at large, because we're not talking about it. We're not telling women, go get checked. That little pressure on your chest is a heart attack. Do you know that more Black women die from a heart attack than any other race? And that is because we don't recognize the signs, and we have been taught to be strong, and we have been taught to push through. Right? So by the time they figure out they're having the heart attack, it's too late to get the appropriate help to reverse it.
Okay, let's talk about that. Why do you think that is? We are not only taught to be strong, but we're continuing that narrative today.
That's a long one to unpack, and it's very deep. And I think that we were taught when we were taken from our original origin, our original home.
We're not on TikTok, girl. You can say whatever words you want to say.
Okay, no, I was saying like when we
okay.
when we
I was on TikTok, you kind of got.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. This real talk. Say what you want to say, how you want to say.
When we were stolen from our land and ripped from our culture, right? When we were stolen and ripped from our culture, we came here to this country as slaves, and as slaves, you had to move and operate in a specific way. Okay. If you wanted to survive, if you wanted your family to survive, because sometimes if you did something wrong, it might be a result taken out on your family. So I think that has been passed down through the generations. And to be quite honest, I know you have a very broad audience, but we are the mold. And if you read the Bible, we are made in his likeness. People of color, Black people specifically, we are made in his image. And if you read the Bible, he has coppery skin and he has coily hair. And there has always been some level of intimidation where we have to show up in a certain way. And weakness is something that is frowned upon. So we as women, when we go into certain spaces, we're not allowed to be vulnerable. We're not allowed to share what we're going through. We're told that we need to be strong. We're told that in order for you to advance in your career and as a mother and as a wife, you have to do double. You've got to run that household. You've got to do all the things. But they never once said in any of that, make sure that you take care of yourself, because you won't be able to do any of that unless you're healthy.
And thank you for sharing that. And yes, I do have a vast audience. Literally, girl, like 4 million people across 106 countries.
I had no idea. Okay.
But I sit in a space, obviously, I'm this melanated chocolate girl. My late husband was a white man. We were together for 32 years. So there's no mixed understanding that, they're talking like, I'm talking from my lived experience. You're talking from your lived experience. We showed up in this world in the body we're in, and the world has treated us a certain way. That's just the facts. It's not shading or doing any. And when my late husband and I started to have children, became the concept we really had to start talking about, I'm Black and he's white. Because now we're bringing children into this world. And how is the world going to treat them based on what that looked like? Never was really much of a conversation we had to talk about, but the reality of that became apparent. It showed up a little ways, like my husband would buy me cards and he couldn't find the card he wanted. It was a white girl. So he colored her in brown because he was like, I am not giving this to my chocolate daughter, my chocolate wife. And I appreciate him for that. But it's just a reality. These are not misnomers. These are not things we're making up. It is the fact. But the fact of that, needing to carry that pressure that's subconsciously given to you, and not that other races and cultures don't go through those, because when I talk to other people in other cultures, they have this concept of strength and what that looks like. So I ask my listeners to go, grandma raised me like that too. And I never got to say I was tired, or I never got to say I couldn't do enough. So even though we're sharing it from our perspective, I believe that other people can take that same situation and go, I can relate to that, instead of pulling up a guard and just say, well, you're relatable to that.
And I think that it's something for all women.
Yes.
I was just speaking from my perspective, but
Absolutely.
it is absolutely all women. There's so much expectations to be a working mom, to take care of the household, to make sure that the kids are taken care of and gotten to all the different activities, and to do all those things. And there's this expectation that as a wife or a woman, and you have to, you have to do it all. But what I am learning is that, people say, oh, well, I often to refer to my husband as my life partner. Yeah, he's my life partner because we're in this together.
Yeah.
Right? We're in this together. So if today I only have 20%, he's got to pull 80. And today I know that he's coming in. He's not going to be on 100% today. So I'm going to have to pick up whatever slack he's not able to pick up this afternoon. And that's how, once I started to get that realization that I don't have to do it all and that I can ask for help, that is when things started to change for me. But that only happened since 2022 after having a heart attack. It took a major life event to realize that I needed to put myself first so that I can give to other people.
Thank you for actually going back to the heart attack. What were you thinking at that moment when this is going on, and your thought?
Honestly,
girl, look, yes, please.
Honestly, we were in the hospital. The ambulance came, and I was able to walk out the door and do all the things. So,
okay.
I got to the hospital, and then they told me immediately that I didn't have a heart attack, but they were going to keep me for observation. But while I was in the emergency room, and I hadn't gotten the word yet on what my status was, my brother-in-law works overnight. I called him, and I told him I was crying. And I knew he'd be up because he's still working. He's still on his drive. And I said, I'm scared, right? I'm scared. I'm crying. I'm telling him I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen or whatever. And then I said to him, but the only thing I ask is that you take care of your brother. So I knew that if he was taken care of emotionally, that my kids would in turn be taken care of, because he would have the capacity to support them if somebody supported him.
So I hear you saying you were preparing that you may have not left that hospital.
I was preparing that I wasn't going to leave that hospital. And to be quite honest, every day I get up and I move through my life as though it might be the last, because I have learned how fragile life can be.
And how does that show up in how you experience life? What ways? And I want to hear, before the heart attack, Trish would have done X, Y, Z in this situation. After that heart attack, these different diagnoses, life and response looks this way.
Well, for sure, response looks like if you call me for something and you need help, I assess everything on the basis, do you have the same resources and access that I have, in which I would go to do or get or perform this information? And if I can answer yes to that question, that means that I will probably say no, depending on who the person is. If it's my mother-in-law, if it's my mother, if it's my kids or something, it depends on who the person is. But I am very selective on where I put my energy and whom I share my energy with. I'm a recovering people pleaser. So based on things that happened in my childhood. I was constantly seeking validation without knowing. So I had trained the people in the world around me to need me, which meant that validated that I am needed and I'm valued. But I've learned since my value comes from me, not from the outside world. And I don't need someone to validate me to say who I am by the amount of need that they have for me in their life.
Okay. I want to come back to both. No is a powerful word.
Absolutely.
And when people think of self-care, society gives us images of being in a spa or getting a massage or someone going on a long walk. Being able to say no is self-care to me. The way you evaluated their ability to manage and handle the situation equal to what you have. What really can I give you that you don't have already? You may need the friend part of me to be there and encourage you, but this is really your road to carry on and travel. And people listening to this conversation, they'll listen to this and they'll have to choose to take some of this to make it part of their own and travel the road of life independently. But I want to talk about the power of no and being okay with it. Was there guilt when you first started saying no, or how did that work? Because you didn't just come off the table and just start knowing everybody. It had to.
No. Actually, I started to get therapy because it is such a traumatic event to have open heart surgery. So I found a psychiatrist and a therapist, and they are now part of my care team because mental health is very important. And my therapist taught me, we worked for weeks on boundary setting, and I had a workbook, and I had to work independently and read and do exercise on the power of boundaries. Because boundaries, when we talk about boundaries, oftentimes people think that the boundary that we're setting is for the other person. It's actually for you. The boundary is for you. So when you say no, that is a boundary that you have. Like, I've set a boundary. The boundary is, if you have access to the same things and tools and everything that I have access to, I am happy to share what you should do and how you should access it, but I'm not going to do it for you. But there is so much power in no. And I learned through setting healthy boundaries that no is a part of those healthy boundaries. No is the second part of it. So first you got to know where your boundary is, and then you have to, the no is the consequence. The no is the consequence of those boundaries. Because once you set a boundary, if you keep crossing it, there's no need for that. Because every time you say yes in an area of a boundary that should have been a no, you've crossed that boundary. And that boundary is what you put in place, protect your peace, to have your wusa, because people will take as much as they can from you once you're willing to give. And I also learned that I was in a very one-sided relationship world. I would show up for people, but then when it was time for me, I felt that I had no one to really show up for me.
Thank you for explaining that. For someone that is trying to empower the no, but they feel guilt when they say no, what would you say to them?
I would say that change takes time. Continue to prioritize yourself, continue to give yourself grace, and learn from the situation. If you felt that you could have said no in that situation and you went ahead because you were guilty, just take a couple minutes either to jot it down or even go through it in your head. What could I have done differently in this situation to get to them? What could I have said so that it could have been a win for me and a win for them? They felt yet supported, and I felt like I was able to protect my peace and my energy. So, you're not going to get it right every time. I'm not going to get it right every time, but don't be hard on yourself. Really just go back and think about how you could do it differently the next.
I like that, because we're not going to get it perfect. I like how you also said how it would set them up for success, because it empowers them and it also puts you in a place with the boundary. I want to go on to the second thing that you just mentioned about being a recovering people pleaser. And I like the idea that you had to go back and evaluate a pattern in your life. What happened that caused that? A lot of times we're looking at our current pattern, our current responses, but it oftentimes requires us to go back into our life to see how we got to this place, why I do this, why I show up this way, why I respond. And before the heart attack, had you begun this backward reflection to see your patterns in life?
No, before the heart attack, I could say that I would just walk around, Tina, and be angry. I was an angry person. I was always ready to explode. I would want to help people because that made me valid, right? That's where I got my validation. But also, it built a lot of resentment.
Also,
It
many
built
people
a
need
l-
me. Yeah.
it built a lot of resentment because it's like, well, why are you calling me? You could book the daggone flight on Southwest yourself. You know what I mean? So, and it was getting to that point where I felt like, like I was giving, and then wasn't getting anything back. So I began to look at all the relationships in my life. And I can say, like, right now, I'm living in a space that is very much isolated. I'm very much isolated. And I think part of it is by choice. And then I guess another part of it is because I just don't have the energy anymore to put into certain things. Going through radiation treatment and, just a plethora of things. Like I am mentally.
Healing is tiresome. And thank you for that, because I encourage people, if they don't know their why behind their behavior, to take that time of self-care and reflection. Maybe you're not ready to go see a mental health professional. Maybe you need to start journaling. And I'll give an example for me. My current husband, we were doing something and he was giving me some insight and I became very defensive. And I just was disgruntled. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave. And I went upstairs. I literally put myself in a timeout. Like, I went upstairs. I sat down on the bed and I was like, why am I responding like this? Is not my normal mode towards him. And I was like, I know he loves me. What he's trying to give me is good information. His intentions are pure. It's not to discredit or do something. And I started thinking of conversations I've had with my dad when I was a child. And he would, now I'm 58, so we wrote our papers. We wrote those things down. Gave it to my dad for review. He would then write over with red ink and then say how bad it was and berate me back and forth. When he started talking, I became that little girl becoming defensive in this big girl body, clapping back. And I was like, so I came downstairs. I told him about how that happened with my dad. And I immediately felt fearful, defensive. And I'm sorry, because that wasn't him, nor was that his behavior and what he was trying to do. But if I didn't take that moment to go upstairs and be reflective, an argument could have ensued back and forth. And then it just piles on top of each other and you have resentment and you don't have communication. And it's really important to take a moment and try to look introspectively and see if our response is warranted to the situation.
Absolutely. And I also believe that you have to really start thinking about and looking at where you're putting your energy. And is this argument worth the energy? Is me pushing back worth the energy? How big or how small is the impact of this situation? Is this something that I can compromise on? And once you're able to do that and realize, okay, not everything, sometimes no response is the response. But I just learned that at almost 55 years old, is that that no response is the response. So, you don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to, everything doesn't have to get you hyped up. Everything doesn't have to get you, you don't have to always go there. Sometimes not engaging is the best response at all, because the next time someone is coming at you with that kind of stuff, they won't, because they see that you won't engage.
That is absolutely true. So you go from, I'm going to leave the hospital, the heart attack is not taking me out. Okay, we're good with it. And now there's something else. And then there's another something.
Yes.
Was there ever a point that you just felt like you wanted to go? And if so, how did you navigate?
Absolutely. There are days when I am extremely just tired, because when I tell you I had the open heart surgery, then my kidneys stopped functioning for a little while. Then they found fluid on my lungs. I couldn't breathe. Then I had to, go through the recovery process and, then start the biopsies and all the other things. And I just felt like, there are often times and still times where I'm like, I just can't do it. There are times that I honestly say that I just can't, but I am more comfortable with saying to my husband, today's not the day. I just can't do it. And I try not to say that it would be best for me to pass away, right? Because then that means that I have totally like given up and lost the fight. But there are days where I am pretty close and tired, having to go get medications, having to take medications, the side effects of the medications, all of those things really take a toll on me mentally. And I deal with that. I started visual journaling. So
And what
how
is that?
how I capture my life is that so say from you and I today, I'll take a screenshot of this and I have a mini printer and I'll put it in a journal, and I'll make sure that there's like red and black. So and we just use scraps from around the house, any kind of paper or gift wrap or anything. And then you just make it's like a visual journal of what's happened and, a few words about what happened that day
Okay.
or around that time. And I found that has really helped me because it really helps me to appreciate the value of life and the value of continuing on and the value of keeping, of pushing through, that I can go back and tangibly look and be like, you know what? Shit, my life ain't all that bad. You know what I'm saying? I went here. I did this with my daughter. I did this with my son. We went to dinner as a family for Jeff's birthday. I can go back and like tangibly feel that. Or when I was in Florida, we went to the outlets with my husband's aunt and his mom. And it was, great to go out with the older ladies and just take care of them and pamper them. And then I came back and I did a whole spread on that time just at the outlets, So I'll always remember those times. And when I get down, I can go back and look and be like, girl, you know what I'm saying? Remember that day you did this. Some people don't have the privilege to do some of the things that you are able to journal about. Some people don't have the privilege to travel. Some people don't have the privilege to go out to eat with their families. Some people don't have that privilege. Some people don't have the privilege of receiving Christmas gifts that you can actually tear the wrappers off and save some of those and put them in a journal. Some people don't have that privilege. So when I look at my journal, that's one of the things that really helps me because it reminds me that, hey, you have a life. It's not a bad one. You just got some bumps in the road, but it's not a bad one.
Thank you. And for my community that has lost a loved, life sometimes can make you feel like you do not want to be. And I'm thankful for Trish sharing that. But oftentimes we're not making plans to remove ourselves from this world. We're thinking what life would be. But if anyone is taking active thoughts or plans to remove yourself from this world, seek help immediately. Right. Email me, text me, call suicide hotline, because that is not a natural response to the difficulty of this life. Feeling like sometimes I can't do it, it is natural. It is hard, and that is perfectly fine. But when you see yourself putting things in place or orchestrating things to remove yourself from this world, that is not safe and that is not helpful for you. And that is a time to seek help and to let someone come beside you on this journey of life to be able to help you, because sometimes it's just too much and it's okay to ask for help. It is okay.
And I've had those thoughts before, right? And also, but you know what also pulls me back is that the way I'm feeling because somebody has been lost in my life, I will now leave that gap and that feeling for someone else behind. And I always say, what I want that for my kids, what I want that for my husband, what I want, I think about what it would mean to them and how they would, like what kind of hurt and grief and things that they would, go through. And it would be caused directly by my actions. So just, the way that, when you're experiencing grief and you might hit a wall and say, you know what, I'm done. Also remember how you're actually feeling. And you don't want to leave somebody with those feelings as well. There's always somebody that you can talk to. Somebody is always a phone call away to be able to support you. And we all are here for a reason and we all bring value, and you just have to hold strong to what you can do. Begin to share your voice, begin to volunteer to help others, start to tell your story, jump on social media and start to share your story and talk things through, journal, whatever you need to do, because you're here for a reason. So just hold on and tap into the resources around you.
I love that. And I love that you made a journal less intimidating. Didn't sound like you had to be an artist. It just sounded like you could put some things together and put some memories there and be reflective. You don't even have to be a writer. There are so many ways that you can capture the memory in the moment to remind you of the moments of joy, the moments of happiness. And the more that book or that place fills up, that you've been capturing that, it fills your heart and reminds you that you do have purpose and value. You talked about sharing your story. Can you talk a little bit about what drew you to social media and how you share your story?
Well, I am a heavy consumer of TikTok, and there's always been something in me about sharing my story, right? But that story, I don't know if I'm ready to share publicly, right? So when this heart attack happened, actually from my hospital bed, I did record some TikToks, but I never had uploaded them. And then my daughter kept pushing me and saying, go ahead, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. So I just grabbed my phone and did all the wrong things and just started talking, but is there a right and wrong, and just started talking. And that's how I, started to tell my story. And then I lost my purpose on social media because TikTok is a place where emphasis is placed so much on the numbers, the likes, the views, and all of those things. So then you get caught up and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm in 200 to 300 people jail and this and that. And all of these things started going through my head. And then that got the better of me. And I lost my vision and purpose for what I was on the app for. So I have a lot of content. I just haven't uploaded it recently. I'm still recording my journey. I just haven't uploaded it because I found out that based on my personality type, that it was no longer fun to upload because I was focused on the wrong thing. And I lost my purpose of being on social media. So I am going to come back to it because there's so much to share. And, actually today is the 27th of February. Today, God works in mysterious ways. So when you invited me onto this, today is actually the 1-year anniversary of my thyroidectomy, the partial, where they found the cancer. So a week from today, I will get the news that I have cancer. So 7 days from today, I will get the news that I have cancer. Today was the day of the 1 year. Today is the 1-year anniversary of my surgery.
Wow. When you found that out a year ago, what were your thoughts at that time?
Oh my God. Listen, they had to peel me up off the floor.
Right.
They had to peel me up off the floor. I thought life was over. When you hear those words, cancer, rare form, we've got to get you back into the OR tomorrow.
I remember talking with you about.
When you hear those words, time stops. Time stops. So, you don't know if it's a death sentence. You don't know what it is. You don't have enough information about your diagnosis to make informed decisions or even to be in the right frame of mind. And everything happened so quickly. And then I'm WebMD all the way. I'm on the internet. I'm searching this, searching that, searching this, searching that. And that's another reason why I started the TikTok, because when you look up Hurtho cell carcinoma, not a lot comes up, and not a lot comes up where it is women of color. So it was important to put a face that people could relate to out there as well. But it's a scary thing, just outside of these office doors, I fell into my son's arm, and there's 1 day a week at that point where my husband wasn't home, and that was Thursdays when he would go into the office. And to think I got the word on the day that he was not in not at home. So, but I was able to call one of my colleagues who is also a friend, and she was actually on a business trip, and I called her and she took charge she was either in Miami or Atlanta, and she took charge over the phone. She got my son in order. She got me up off the floor, got me to breathe and calm down. But it was one of the probably worst days of my life. And then they're talking about, well, we can get an OR. We're going to get you in tomorrow. And when doctors are talking like that, it's serious. They're not saying come next week, come next month, or come to my office next week and we'll chat about this. He was like, I'm trying to get us an OR for tomorrow. Unfortunately, he couldn't get an OR till the Tuesday after. So I went in. So exactly 14 days to the day of my first thyroidectomy, I had the other half removed, making it total.
And so you have gone from falling to sharing your story.
Yes, to sharing and encouraging, and something that your audience can relate to. Grief is not everybody. People experience grief in so many different ways. I grieve my former self. I grieve the person that I used to be. I grieve the person who had the recall of an elephant and can't think of anything now. Can't remember anything. If I don't write it down, I grieve that person who, when my daughter was moving, my husband and I have moved entire houses, just me and him. And now I'm the person that just has the cleaning supplies, and I'll clean when we get to the new location. And, and I grieve that person. I grieve that person who, I wasn't so physical or so athletic, but I grieved that person who was able to really get shit done when it had to be done. And I really grieved that so many days. Like, I can't even explain it without getting emotional, because I feel like I have a lump in my throat.
But what I hear you saying, when the pressures of life reduce your capacity, go with that. Don't try to push beyond your ability, because more harm than good can happen from that. And expect it. Though the weight of the journey, you got to take some things off your plate. You have to say no to some things. You can't do it all.
You take that weight off your plate, but also you begin to create, quote unquote, a new normal for yourself. Yes. You grieve that person, right? You grieve that old person that you used to be, but then you evolve into a different person. And I'm not going to say better or worse, but you are a different person. You evolve into another person, and you find and you create new normals, and okay, I like to clean. I can get it done. Okay, I'll clean. I can carry what I can carry. I can do those things. So you just figure out what you can do, where you can add value, and what also makes you happy. So how can you add value to this process, whether it's a family process or whatever it is, or if it's something about you physically when you're exercising, how can I still get the value out of exercising, right? Knowing that I might have shortness of breath, or I can't go as long as I used to. But you figure out, how can I still enjoy this, get value or add value, and still make myself happy in the process.
And that right there is important. That's in any process and journey that we're going. I know when my late husband passed, the weight in my brain mentally, the grief fog, the grief brain, I used to carry a little memo pad and write stuff down because I couldn't remember anything. So I learned how to cope with that. I couldn't walk around not forgetting everything. So I found that notepad and I made do. I said no to things that I could not handle because the weight and the pressure and the stress of his absence was deafening. I could not function to the same level that I was accustomed to. That I was grieving my husband's absence from this world and my incapacity to function as I was accustomed to. It's such a layered process when we are grieving. And I look at grief when there's something that's no longer what it used to be and you're accustomed to that. Our health, our life, and experience. And that's why there's transferable skills in picking up some of the things that we've heard other people experience. I want to circle back to something you said, and we started this conversation. And I know a lot of my listeners and part of my community, the widowhood, have lost a spouse. And a lot of times they have regret or guilt or struggle with living their life in the absence of their spouse. You said that when you thought you were not leaving that hospital, you wanted people to support your husband. You wanted him to be in a place where he had that support, and that support would transfer to your children because he was in a good place. And I hear you saying that if that was your last day in this world, what you wanted was for your husband to be well.
I want it because I know the bond that we share and how we move together and how we operate together. I often joke and say that, we move together so much and spend so much time together that it's actually unhealthy. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're always together. So typically, we're not, you see one, the other one's not going to be too far behind. So I just, like, even when we travel, to give you an example, when I travel for work, and he called me and he was like, yeah, I'm kind of lost. I don't know. Because the evenings we're together. We're sitting on a couch together. We're eating together. He said he was lost. He said he didn't know if he should watch TV. He didn't know if he should go in the basement and play his game. He didn't know, if he should go up to bed now. because these are things that we typically do together. So he was just like kind of just like moving through until I returned, you know?
So for the person that's lost because they're never returning.
And for the person that's lost and never returning.
And if you were that person that was no longer here, what would have been your hope or your desire if you heard, Trish, this is going to be your last hour and you can hope whatever you want for your husband? Because oftentimes people yearn to hear what that person would have said for them because they never got to hear. What would you have wished for Jeff in his life?
What I would have wished, and I continue to wish for him, that if I were to pass away before him, that he would continue to live his life with the same vigor and the same fun and the same everything that we continue to do, and find ways to continue to make himself happy without me being there. Find love, find hobbies. You know, he's very close with his family. It's very important to him. Make sure that you're still maintaining those connections and basically live life. Just because I am no longer here doesn't mean that you have to stop living. And that's something that's very hard for people to do. And it's easy for me to say it because I'm not in that situation, right? But you have to keep living. The person who has passed on, your spouse, they loved you. They loved you for what you brought into their life, how you love them. And to be quite honest, you know, my godfather said this to me at my wedding. He said, I wish you the best, right? He said something, and then he said, you know, or he said something like, I wish you something. And then he said, and, you know, and I wouldn't want anything bad for myself. So I wish you the best. Like he was saying, like, you know, I don't want anything bad. So why would I wish you anything bad, right? So your spouse, even though they're not here, if they were here, would they want to see you sitting moping? Would they want to see you lost? Would I want to see Jeff lost? Would I want to see him moping? Would I want to see him sad? No. And I understand that grieving is a process and you have to go through that whole process. The first birthdays, the first Christmases, the first Thanksgiving, and all of those things.
The first, second, and third. I don't know if they're talking about that person. Them birthdays come back. But what you're speaking of, you're speaking from the person that could have crossed over and very to that. So you had to come to terms with those thoughts. You had to come to terms because often people say we never had that conversation. But it's situations like this in life that can be a gift to allow you to express things that you may have never expressed before because it wasn't imminent. It wasn't something that had to be addressed. And that second chance that you have, you've been using it to show up. I know you haven't been on social media a lot, but when you were doing the lot and having conversations with people, what was your intention and what did you want to have happen from sharing your story with them?
For me, I just want to touch one person, and anything above one is more than a blessing, right? Just one person to hear my voice, hear my story, and hear what I've been through. And then even if they begin to journal, if they begin to set boundaries, if they begin to have conversations with their spouses or other family members, and say, you know, if anything were to happen to me, a lot of times the living don't give each other permission. You know what I'm saying? So while we're living, there's no permission because we don't have to think about that, right? Especially in this age group here, you know, we still going, we still moving, we still got it, you know? So we're not having those conversations saying, you know, if anything happened to me, but have those conversations and give your spouse or partner or family member permission to find happiness. Find happiness, have those conversations, have those talks. And, you know, don't think that anything that you are doing or going through for yourself is selfish, because it is not. And one thing that I don't like to do is when people say, oh, you know, just give it some time, it'll get better, it'll do this. That's not what people want to hear. Not while they're in the moment. People want you want to surround yourself with people that will allow you to lean into your emotion and your vulnerability and your grief and your feeling, you know. And if those people are not that, find a support group, Tina, anybody who will allow you to be in a space where you can be vulnerable and express those emotions. Because when you don't express those emotions and you're not allowing yourself, that emotion stays in you and begins to rot. Because when we're in certain spaces, we're taught to push it down. People train us to push down our emotions around them. So but you need to grieve. You need to go through the process. And then when you said birthdays 1, 2, and 3, my pastor, when my father passed away, she said to us that the grieving process takes 3 years.
Longer. It's a life journey.
It's a life journey. She said it takes 3 years. But when you put it into perspective, imagine when you're off work after day 3 or day 5, you got to get back to work. You know what I'm saying? So there was no space to grieve there. Then you have the kids. You don't want the kids to see you crying. You don't want, you know what I'm saying? So it is a huge process. But the biggest thing that I have learned to lean into my emotion. If I'm not feeling it, I say, you know what, babe? I'm just not feeling it today, or whatever's going on, or, whatever's happening. You have to share those, and you have to surround yourself with people who will allow you to authentically show up and grieve. Not let you sit in it, but also allow you to get it off your chest, and then they can channel that emotion into another activity or another conversation or whatever it is. But you want to surround yourself with people who will let you be.
That is beautiful advice. I am glad today was a good day for you to be able to have this conversation, because I know your energy and your space is important and is protected. I've asked you a lot of questions. Any questions you have of me by chance?
You know my story, and you know your audience. Is there anything that I didn't touch on that you think might be helpful for us to talk about that could help one person, 2 person, or 10? Or maybe the 4 million that's going to lay ears on this?
Girl, I'm thinking we did that. I think we did that.
Okay.
We talked about the ability to go back and revisit patterns that have led us to where we are now. We talked about the power of no. We talked about boundaries and self-care. We talked about being vulnerable and allowing other people to help us and realizing we cannot do it all. We talked about mental health, having that mental health team to allow people to help us. And if we don't organically have those people, to go out and find them, to go search for our tribe, get our community of people that can validate, understand, support, and encourage and inspire us to keep going. We talked about the reality that sometimes we want to quit. Sometimes we envision a world without ourselves. And we acknowledge that. And we keep a journal to remember those full moments of life and continue doing that. Now, we cover.
Okay, and I have one other question for you.
Oh, with a finger point.
And for your audience. Have you scheduled your annual physical yet?
Oh, so
we're at the top of the
I just got
here.
Oh yeah, I had my mammogram a couple of weeks ago. I just had my blood drawn this week, and I have my physical Monday.
Great, because that is a plethora of that. Knowing all of that you just did and you have schedule just warms my heart, because had I been taking care of myself and doing the simple things, it's like an annual physical, it could have avoided some of these illnesses. And I would encourage your audience, we're at the top of the year. If you haven't scheduled it yet, get on the calendar, because we all know it takes a minute to get on the calendar. Get on the calendar, get your annual physical done, know your numbers, understand your numbers, ask questions, do your own research, and follow Tina's lead, because man, she's got everything coming up over the before Q1 is done. She will know all of her numbers.
Yeah.
And what I do want to say to you is just that I thank you and I appreciate you. And I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. And I would just say that I thank God that our paths had crossed on TikTok, and that you have opened your platform to me on now multiple occasions. And, it is not taken lightly that you are sharing your platform with me and allowing me to share my story. And, and I appreciate that you are always there to uplift and to support in any capacity. And, what they say, we listen and we don't judge. And I know that you listen and you don't judge. And I truly appreciate you allowing me into this space, and to really, I think our ultimate goal, you and I, is the same thing. It's just that we really want to help people through learned experiences.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I am so grateful. I know Mr. gonna be home in a little bit, so my goal was to be done by the time Mr. got close-ish, so then you can transition to what else you need to do. So I want to say thank you for your time. And I would like you to close out this conversation with any final comments or thoughts that you have for our community.
Well, to the community, what I will say to you is that you are valued, you are special, and what you are going through is something that many of us will go through or have gone through or are going through right now. And you are not alone at all in any form. Seek support, and also just remember to show up authentically as yourself. And whoever can't accept that, you got to keep it pushing, move on to the next, because your healing and you making it through this season in your life, is very important. And you have to do that with the right people surrounding you. And, make sure that your loved ones know that you love them. And just all I have to say is just always remember that you are valued. You are special. And it's hard, but there's so many hard things in life. But you got this. You have got this.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.